Where is foamy headed toward? Foamy is headed toward the ideal. And how you find that ideal essentially has to do with the 9, with the sustaining of the good. The easy way to do it is to just add the two numbers together. 1 plus 5 equals 6. And 6 is the ideal. Recall, 6 is hoi, and that's objective in that first row. And hoi is the perfect, the all ideal. And so S-foamy is moving toward that. The easy way, like I said, was to add 1 and 5 together, but what you're really doing is you're seeing it in relationship to 9, which is the sustaining of the good. And so you divide 15 by 9 and you get a remainder of 6, which then is the primary movement or motivation or direction for 15, for foamy. And then we can use the same thing in regard to man, which is 12. Well, 12, 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 is synthesis, which is the S up above, and the power. So man is moving towards synthesis and toward power. Humanity is. And as being a part of humanity, we can as well then. And so that's another way of saying that 12 divided by 9 is 1 time with a remainder of 3. So when we look at 15, which 15 was trust, by the way, because trust, we trust in S-foamy, essentially. We trust that S-foamy is going, everything is converging toward a good end. That S knows what's the highest, best thing to do, a good thing to do. The S goes by the inspiration of Jehovah, even though S doesn't understand necessarily why it should be going that way. It doesn't necessarily understand the wisdom there, but understands that it's the right way to go. So S goes that way, and in the wake comes everything else. So that's S-foamy, the signs of the times. And that has to do with trust. As we mentioned, that 15, the foamy was trust. So you had 15, 16, 17, 18. And so the integration of all that trust is 18, which is the hack. And so, because, and remember now, we're talking about humankind, the trust of humanity, and it's a collective. And so you're going to have all these ranges, variations of all the individuals, but collectively there is a direction and there's a cohesive, whatever entity that they are. But all those together, all these different ways of approaching, all that gets integrated, all the trusts, all the S-foamies, all the different flows towards convergence, that all gets integrated in 18. It gets synthesized in 17 first, though, because you have 15, 16, 17, the third one, and that's S, has to do with synthesis. And 7 itself, another way to look at 17, dang, is 7 itself has to do with understanding. And we mentioned this in the past. So you have 6, and then 6 drifts to 7, and then you have the collapse and you gain an understanding. So it becomes clear to you, oh yeah, you know, I shouldn't have done that or should have done this. So it presents a type of understanding, a clearer understanding. And so that's all involved in 17. And then we have the drift into 18, as we mentioned. And then you have the dichotomy, like, for example, in the social order, where they don't necessarily see eye to eye. But that's all. So what is that in relationship to man? 18 in relationship to man. Well, it's the 7th pulse of man. Is the 18. You have 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 7th pulse. 7, and if you look up above 18, the hack, you'll see the Drew up there, number 7. And indeed, that's the limitations, fullness, and extremes. And so all those are dealt with in 18. But all at the same time, they're trying to sustain that space that was created when you had the lower and the upper foundation, that space in between them, that common ground, that sort of common, the commons. Now what happens then if that starts, if the commons starts to collapse, starts to dissipate away, starts to get grabbed away, it's gone. Well, that's 19. 19 is actually a continuation of that collapse, because in 18 they're still connected with the corners, and you still have stability there. It's stable. There's there's give and take, and there's attempts at a reconciliation, all that. Although it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And we have to think now, a lot of this that we've been talking with regard to the left and the right, because the left are looking right, because recall that as it drifted, okay, and the higher foundation became then the progressives, and these were the reactionaries over here, and say, don't move so fast, slow down, we want to get there, we want to improve society over here. And these guys, no. But these guys want to go forward, and they feel like these people are stopping them over here. And these people over here are feeling like these people are destroying their whole civilization, because they're reducing all that space in between. Now that's with the drift, that's the lower aspect, because with 17, if there's labor involved, so you're laboring toward fullness, towards fulfillment, and you go this way. Therefore, it's easier to work things out. It's because you recall then now that the progressives are over here, and those who want to keep the anchorage and everything, they're over here, and so they actually more space is being created, more common ground is being created. Although if the progressives move too fast, it freaks out, the people over here who want to, keep with the anchorage. They don't want to lose the anchorage. They don't mind change, but they don't want to lose the anchorage. And anyway, what 19 is it's on the lower aspect of it. It gets progressively worse. And that which was stable and holding thing about in the common ground, that's gone. It's shrunk down. And essentially you have the lowest in man, or the beast, that is brought down to a core, which is in the center, because you'll see that 19 is actually represented there by a couple of snakes. And this is the lower aspect of it. This means the corporea, essentially the serpent, is a symbol of corporea, one of the symbols of corporea. When you reduce down to corporea, then the S aspect of it tends to get not nurtured. On the other hand, for those who have faith in the Great Spirit, when the collapse occurs, that we stay in our center, that we stay in our anchorage, which is an anchorage of light, that will be okay, because the center is always there. It's collapsing into the center. That can mean total chaos. It can go to that extreme, and because it's not connected with anything out there. It's just kind of free floating.